Pokemon Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl was the most disappointing thing since my son. I mean, how much more could you possibly fuck up the remakes to the Generation 4 Pokemon games? And while my son eventually hanged himself in the bathroom at a gas station, the unfortunate reality of the Sinnoh remakes is that they'll be around forever. They'll never go away. They can never be undone. If someone who's under the age of like 12 says Platinum content was unnecessary because this is a Diamond and Pearl remake, then I suggest you shut this review off right now before I carefully explain how much of a fucking idiot you are. So where do I possibly start? Nothing in BDSP makes any sense at all. It comes off like a game made by an out-of-touch tone-deaf boomer. It's like Junichi Masuda thought the fans just liked the older games over the new, so he just ordered LCA to make it faithful as possible, and they decided to go with it without anyone saying that it's adapting an outdated and broken game, or was a stupid, lazy mess. I guess at this point, who's gonna question Masuda or tell him what to do? He got some obedient, obscure port developers to remake the game. He probably got rid of those people that questioned him creatively a long time ago. I also think that everyone just assumed that a Sinnoh remake would be an instant hit, regardless of what the quality was like. Really, how hard could it be to screw up? It's like screwing up mashed potatoes. You boil the water, you burn the packet.
Kidum, red.
Okay, no more shitty parody. Hello fellow Jerrycans. We're finally here everybody, the long-awaited Generation 4 Sinnoh remakes. Ever since USUM, the Pokemon franchise has been going down a long slope, and we kept asking ourselves, how are they gonna fuck it up this time? Well, this is how, folks.
Observe.
Pokemon Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl are embarrassing, terrible remakes in my opinion. They really did bare minimum for a quote-unquote remake. I'm even having a hard time calling this Banfadudu a remake because it barely remade the game, which I'll get more into later. But seriously, unless they start taking out features and content from the base game, this is the worst Pokemon remake possible. They did bare minimum. Now, I must make a disclaimer. If you've never played the original Gen 4 Sinnoh games, you will probably enjoy this game. If you only started to play recent dumpster fire games like Sword and Shield, you will get out a kick of this game too. I, however, am not either of these players. I played the old original games and all the previous remakes, so I had expectations as an old fan. This review is based on the context of comparison to the original classic games and other remakes. It may sound unfair, but hey, it's a fucking remake of a classic game. So what I'm saying is, even though this game doesn't suffer from problems like bad map design or too much handholding like recent games since it's a faithful remake to the OG Gen 4 games, compared to the legendary game that does exist Platinum and other remakes, this is another middle finger to the fans by the Pokemon Company. So warning, this review is coming from the perspective of an old fan who has stayed with the franchise even before the original DP games came out. But before I start the review, I want to do a burger analogy with the games. That's right, everyone liked the burger analogy from the Let's Go games and USUM review video, so I'm bringing it back. Get Chef Gordon Ramsay in here, let's do this. So, Pokemon Diamond and Pearl was a burger that had good ingredients, but it was unfinished because the patty was uncooked and there was some mold in it. And to top it all off, the burger was ruined by Chef Masuda spilling the rotten 151 Pokédex limit sauce all over the burger. DP burger was disgusting. Platinum is a burger where they fixed the burger by getting rid of all the mold and rotten 151 sauce, properly cooking the patty, and added some nice sprinkles such as the Battle Frontier or Distortion World, and became one of the best Pokemon burgers of all time. Now, if you were trying to remake a burger 15 years later, what is the logical burger to copy? Pokemon Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl is an amateur chef named LCA under the command of Chef Masuda trying to faithfully remake the disgusting DP burger down to the uncooked, moldy patty and the terrible rotten 151 sauce while adding nothing new to the recipe. Do you see why I'm calling BDSP terrible remakes? So, let's review this son of a gun game, Pokemon Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl, released for the Nintendo Switch in 2021. Part 1. It's a Diamond and Pearl remake, not Platinum. I recently made a video titled Pokemon Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl will probably suck. Most people agree with me, but it was the most heavily disliked video I've ever made. And to be fair, I knew there were going to be a lot of haters with a clickbait title like that. I just wanted to reward myself a clickbait video that will guarantee to get views after I put so much effort into an hour-long ORAS review that barely got any views. So please understand I need to put food on my table too. LOL. Anyways, I got 3 types of angry comments that try to rebuttal my predictions that BDSP will suck ass, where only one has any credential. First was, the game's not out yet, how can you judge it? That's true. I was just predicting with my logical deduction based on the marketing method and trailers, so that's a valid criticism. That video wasn't a review, and well, the game is out now, so here we are. Second comment was, this is a remake of Pokemon Diamond and Pearl. Why do you expect Platinum content? Well, to that I say, have you actually fucking played the previous Pokemon remakes? Mainly Pokemon Heart Gold and Soul Silver, where it was really a Crystal remake because the games included Crystal content like the Eugene, Suicune, and the Battlefront Tower / Frontier. Also, in my recent Platinum review, please go watch it, you'll understand my perspective better. I stated many times that Diamond and Pearl are broken, bland, one of the worst Pokemon games that were saved by Pokemon Platinum. It had great potential, but was hampered down by unfinished stories and a dumbass limited Pokédex, and Sinnoh was finally realized in Platinum. Pokemon Platinum really should be named Pokemon Diamond and Pearl but fixed. So my question is, why oh why choose to adapt an inferior version of a game to a faithfully remake when a superior game exists? And no people, just including Giratina's theme in this game or Platinum clothes as fucking early purchase bonus in the game, doesn't count. Now, I get it. A Diamond and Pearl remake is much more marketable than a Platinum remake because Platinum didn't sell as much, for obvious reasons. Dialga and Palkia are much more iconic and marketable fuckers to put on the cover of the game compared to poor Giratina, so I kinda get why they chose to do this in a marketing perspective. So choosing to have Dialga or Palkia appear as Spirit Pillar instead of Giratina maybe makes sense. But still, they could have included so many minor changes or added features from Platinum that wouldn't affect the story that much or stop it from being a Diamond and Pearl remake. Like, these minor additions from Platinum gone in this game would have been easy to program in and would have taken none or very little effort if they even had the slightest will to make a fucking good game, but they of course did not. For example, Rowan giving a speech and roasting the poor Team Galactic grunts at Eterna City. It's just extra lines of dialogue. Why can't this be in the remake? Or minor story events like Barry wanting to become Crasher Wolf's apprentice that gave him character and more memorable, and him hiding behind the cute sign. Platinum restructured the game so that you aren't constantly backtracking to Hearthstone City or Lost Tower in the mid-game, and I don't think there are DP purists out there that would have gotten mad if you copied this structure for a fucking DP remake. Platinum added in small stuff like versus sprites or made Team Galactic's building interior decor actually look like a fucking villain's lair, not a copy-paste of the apartment building you find at other places. Like, these little things don't have to be faithfully adapted for a DP remake. These are small improvements that should be in the fucking remake. God. When I was playing other remakes in the Pokemon series, I was in the mindset of, I wonder what they added in this time, or I wonder how they have changed this time. Contrarily, while I was playing Pokemon BDSP's main campaign, I was on a constant roll of saying, so that's gone now. For example, so the cool decor for the Elite Four in their respective rooms is gone now. So the story events with Looker so that you don't miss important HM items are gone now. So the Team Galactic story of Karen at Stark Mountain is gone now. The versus sprites are gone now, so we can't see Maylene's feet in HD now.
마스다 형!
Also, like I pointed out in Platinum's review, in the story, not just the Spirit Pillar event was fixed. We had Cyrus showing up more in the story than just, 4 times in DP and BDSP. His speech at Team Galactic's building that showed his ideals, gone. Him revealing to the player that he's Team Galactic's boss early in the game and battling you because it's super obvious, gone. Cyrus losing his temper and ranting at the player to show how he's a hypocrite, gone. Great quotes like, I won't accept this can't be, not after all the sacrifices we've made to get this far. What of my new world, of my new galaxy? Was this all a dream to be swept away by your reality? Gone. Siffy actually having a fucking role in the story and telling Cyrus that emotions give life meaning, making the game actually have a message, gone. We're seriously back to Cyrus disappearing as Spirit Pillar after saying he'll be a god one day.
Please clap.
If Platinum was a giant leap for Pokemon, BDSP is a fumbling step back and falling flat on its face. Everything wrong with this fucking game can be probably summarized with literally one button. Diamond and Pearl had one button on the Pokédex, Platinum had 2, so you can go back and forth between features on the Pocket. Of course, it's faithfully recreated to have one button in this remake. Is having one button for tradition or faithfulness more important than a fucking logical convenience function?
다르다.
In the end, playing this game just makes you wish you were playing Pokemon Platinum instead. And I kid you not, I was completely miserable when playing this game and thought it was a threat to my mental health because I was forcing myself to play it on camera when I didn't want to. Fuck this game, I could just play a better Sinnoh game on my DS or my fucking phone emulator. In the end, yes, this game doesn't suffer from the slow ass game engine than Diamond and Pearl, so it's better than DP, but this game is completely inferior to Platinum. Part 2. It's a remake, so of course it's faithful and original. Or remake versus remaster. The third kind of angry comment I got was, it's a remake, so of course it's faithful and original. To that again I say, have you played the previous remakes, you can't call you an idiot because that would be toxic, but you phonies? Because even if Platinum didn't exist, BDSP is still a lame remake compared to Pokemon Fire and Leaf Green, Heart Gold and Soul Silver, Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, and possibly even the Let's Go games. Yes, I'm dead fucking serious, because it barely adds anything new, and chooses to be faithful to the old games, unlike the previous remakes. I really hate the word faithful now. Faithful remake sounds like something a politician or a corrupt corporation would say to rebrand morally ambiguous actions. Faithful, I'll translate that for you. It means unoriginal, lazy, rushing, and cutting corners. Let us pretend third games like Crystal, Emerald, Platinum didn't exist. I argue BDSP still can't stand on its own. How is BDSP still inferior compared to their previous remakes? Well, to that, let's answer the question, is this game a remake or remaster? So let's define both words. I'll take one of my favorite games of all time, GoldenEye 007 on Nintendo 64 as an example. A remaster of a video game is a video game re-release where the base coding program structure is the same, and the only thing usually updated is aesthetic stuff like graphics or the music. All the story, level design, and characters are usually the same. GoldenEye 007 never got an official remaster, but Rare tried to make one in the 2000s on the Xbox 360, but Eon, Microsoft, and Nintendo couldn't get into an agreement. But the file was leaked online recently, and this is a remaster of GoldenEye 007 you're seeing right now. Please agree once for the Nintendo Switch Online, please. Anyways, on the flip side, a remake of a video game usually means making a new game from the ground up, and they are usually reimaginings. For example, for GoldenEye 007 on the Nintendo Wii, the game was remaked into a shooter that feels more like a Call of Duty game because it was popular to rip off Modern Warfare at the time. Although levels, controls, character models, environments were different, the game actually had voice acting, and even James Bond was changed from Pierce Brosnan to Daniel Craig.
Hey, James. For England? For England, Alec.
This is the difference between remaster and remake. Okay, so since we now know what remake and remasters are, let's talk about the previous Pokemon remakes before BDSP. Even though the games are mostly the same, Pokemon remakes felt like actual reimaginings. They felt like a new take on Kanto, Johto, and the Hoenn region. Pokemon Fire Red and Leaf Green felt like Pokemon Red and Blue, reimagined on Ruby and Sapphire's engine. Heart Gold and Soul Silver felt like Gold and Silver reimagined on Diamond and Pearl's engine, and Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire felt like Ruby and Sapphire reimagined on X and Y's engine. Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl, however, is anything but a mute take on Sinnoh, or Diamond and Pearl reimagined on Sword and Shield's engine. You see, BDSP blurs the line between remake and remaster, because by definition, BDSP is a remake since they aren't using the resources of the original games and remade the game completely from the ground up. But they tried their damnedest hard to make it faithful to the original. Like, the steps they went through to make this video game to be faithful to the OG games is absurd and almost comical. Not just the map design look exactly the same, the story and dialogue is the exact same. The Pokemon every single fucking NPC have is the same, the character designs look exactly the same. Even the fucking goofy poses they do whenever a battle starts is the same, and the official art of characters and Pokemon they have on the website is the exact same as the sprites. Imagine if they made a Gold and Silver remake, but had Morty still wearing the shitty white t-shirt, or Price still stuck in his original hobo sailor clothes instead of the suit and coat he got. Even the UI is a bastardized version of Diamond and Pearl's one by mixing it into a Frankenstein with Sword and Shield, and it's the worst UI I've ever seen for the series. Anyways, they really did accomplish the goal they set of faith a remake possible, and it's almost a fucking remaster because everything is the exact same. And my friends, this is why I say the game was creatively doomed from the start, because it seems like a waste of effort. You're remaking from scratch. Why not add things that are new or reimagine some stuff that didn't work in the original games? To quote the developer of Game Freak, who exists in-game and Pokemon Heart Gold and Soul Silver, "We are remaking an old game, but this is quite a challenge. Old fans will not want to mess with their good memories. But there is no point in just redoing the same thing, right?" Like I said with the burger analogy in the intro, it's like trying to create a burger from scratch but copying the exact same moldy, uncooked burger. Don't ruin the new patty by working hard to start growing mold on this pink surface. They were gonna go this direction of keeping everything the same. They should have done an upscale remaster with the original games or something, because the 2D graphics frankly look much more beautiful. And this is just a waste of effort such as 3D graphic designing and resources like the poor people at RCA. Part 3. Comparison with previous remakes. Let's get back to comparing BDSP with previous Pokemon remakes. Each installment were remakes, but unlike BDSP, felt like new installments. Do you get what I mean? Like if Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire was Pokemon 5 One Adventure, Fire Red and Leaf Green felt like Pokemon 6 Return to Kanto. Each remake felt like the continuation of the generation, unlike BDSP, which doesn't even feel like a Generation 8 Pokemon game but a remaster. What do I mean by that? Well, despite being remakes, all the remakes including LGBE had new features that weren't in the past main games, making them feel like new installments. For example, Fire Red and Leaf Green had the Sebi Islands, Heart Gold and Soul Silver had the Pokeathlon, Pokewalker, Falling Pokemon, and more. Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire introduced flying on Latios or Latias, Pokénap features more Mega Evolutions than X and Y, so that game even felt more like a pseudo-sequel to X and Y at the same time. The remakes also included new features that were introduced in the games that came after the original games. Fire Red and Leaf Green introduced double battles, which were introduced in Ruby and Sapphire. Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire had Mega Evolution, and actually updated their regional decks to include new evolutions to the Generation 3 Pokemon. Even Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee included Mega Evolution and Gen 7 features like regional forms. In BDSP, we have none of these. Everything is beat for beat, even things that sucked. We still have Dialga Pocket just sitting on its ass on Spirit Pillar and doing nothing after sewing up RGB lights because it's motherfucking Kanto references. Since BDSP is a Gen 8 video game, if this was like past series, there would have been things introduced in Sword and Shield like Gigantamax and Stadium Gym battles in the game. Yeah, I know why everyone hated Gigantamax, but in my opinion, you should just bite the bullet and try to refine something that didn't work so it works in a new installment, not just delete it and pretend like it doesn't exist, sort of like Disney and the Star Wars sequels. Also, nothing was embarrassing one-to-one faithfulness in the previous remakes. Like I said, the region felt like reimaginings, not remaster. Every single fucking character in the past remakes got new redesigns, and they weren't stuck wearing the same clothes for 15 years. Some characters like Maxie and Archie felt like completely new characters. There were even completely new characters such as Xenia and Oras, Green and Let's Go games, or the Rocket Advents going from nameless clones to individualistic unique characters in Heart Gold and Soul Silver. The said admin even appears in the Let's Go games, unlike the original Gen 1 games, or even Fire Red and Leaf Green as one of Giovanni's underlings. Every single character in BDSP looks the same, talks the same, nothing about the character is changed, and remains faithful. Cyrus is still a boring ass terrible villain because he's based on the DP version, not Platinum, and he didn't get any of the improvements Giovanni or Archie or Maxie got. The maps weren't one-to-one too. Little stuff like Pokemon Centers didn't have the exact same fucking design compared to the previous games. The gym leader puzzles also felt like reimaginings. In Heart Gold and Soul Silver, all the gyms had new designs that homaged the original games but had new puzzles and gimmicks. BDSP even faithfully recreates gym puzzles too, and every single gym had the exact same puzzles. We had to recreate dumbass gyms like Eternal Gym's Lazy Forest Maze puzzle, or the math quiz puzzle at Heartfront Gym, or the possible soft lock at Candace's gym that existed faithfully recreated. It is jarring to see these kind of stuff in $60 HD Switch game. Like I said, the game was just seriously misdirected at the start. It was doomed to fail from the start of development. The higher ups were so out of touch and probably thought this was what the fans wanted. That higher up was probably a short-haired musical genius man from Yokohama, who probably got his feelings hurt after reading mean comments about the newer shitty games like Sword and Shield. So he thought to himself, these fuckers don't like the new stuff and love the old stuff. I guess I'll give them the old stuff exactly as it was, these ungrateful bastards. Well, this is the result. What's more painful than this being a faithful remaster is the paradox and contradictions. Like, they're stupidly faithful to bad stuff from the original games, but they're faithful to only some things, but weren't faithful and changed other stuff. They're like Twitter people, only being faithful when it's convenient for them. Like, I thought this game was going to be Diamond and Pearl, but the battles are updated with Pokemon stats or Mew abilities and Fairy type. So, we even got the return of the Force DXP share from Sword and Shield. And this isn't faithful to the original games. But, then why are the TMs single use again? The last installment introduced TRs, or items that were meant to be like the old TMs. Why is everything battle related Mew, but the TMs old? Where do you draw the line to faithfully recreate in this game from stopping it being a remaster? Hey, how about actually changing everything so it's not a fucking borderline remaster? And since everything is so fucking faithful, how about we play by the rules? Hey, what happened to the zoom in effect every time you battle a Gen 4 game? That's not faithful. Why are the sound effects different from DP? That's not faithful. Why does every single NPC have the same design but Jasmine gets a new design? That's not faithful. Why are the HP bars faster? That's not faithful. Why is there Raminus Park instead of Pal Park? That's not faithful. Why is this game in 3D and not using 2D sprites? That's not faithful. You see the contradiction? It's not like this game is supposed to be a remake, not a remaster, right? Oh wait. Again, everything wrong with this game can be summed up with the Pokétch. The Pokétch was a gimmick that only worked because it was on the hardware of the Nintendo DS, a console that had a dedicated bottom screen with a touchscreen gimmick. Copying that on the Switch makes no sense because the Switch doesn't have a separate bottom screen with a touchscreen. As a result, the UI of the Pokétch feels so clunky and an ass to use because you have to manually move a pointer to emulate clicking on a touchscreen. Just reimagine the Pokétch as a Pokétch Plus or something. They just did that with the Pokénav and ORAS. Can't you do that here too? Part 4. Masuda at 151 Episode 3, The Cursed Revenge of the Cantonian Strike Back returns. But out of all the things they decided to keep faithful, the worst thing is the motherfucking 151 Diamond and Pearl dex. For people who are new to the series, quick reminder, DP had a measly small 151 dex because Masuda was homaging Kanto, the best generation in region or something. So many new Pokemon that were introduced in Sinnoh were cut from the game and were available to the post-game, and many NPCs used nonsensical teams. You had an arbitrary force limit on the available Pokemon to use, and this is one of the main reasons why DP was one of my least favorite games in the series for me. And whoop-de-fucking-do, that's back in this game too! I remember when the game's first trailer were introduced, people saw that Porygon Z was in the trailer, so they actually said, phew, at least they're adapting the Platinum's 210 Pokédex. Well,
so that was a fucking lie.
We really still have Electric-type Gym Leader Volkner using an Ampipom and Octillery, Fire-type Elite Four Flint using many non-Fairy Pokemon, and Snowy Point and Canalave Gym Trainers using random Pokemon instead of their Gym type. However, this 151 Pokédex limit is still somehow more nonsensical than the original DP games because of the Underground. You can catch Pokemon in the wild area caves of the Underground. As a prize, you can actually catch Platinum Dex Pokemon here, and you get access to the Underground pretty early on in the game, right after the second gym. But there's some brain genius out that you shouldn't get the National Dex until you beat the game. As a result, non-151 Pokemon you catch on the Dex don't get Pokédex entries until you beat the game. What sense does that make? Isn't catching Pokemon and reading their entries like one of the fundamental elements of the series? Just give us a National Dex, or at least a 210 Platinum Dex when we get access to the Underground. And if you're gonna let players use Platinum Dex Pokemon, let the NPCs like Flint and Volkner use them too. But oh no, getting the National Dex early wouldn't be faithful to the DP games, right?
정신 차려! 정신 좀 차리라고 제발! 정신 차리라고 제발!
This game fucking sucks and is literally a nonsensical. Again, let's compare it to the previous remakes. Fire Red and Leaf Green, Heart Gold and Soul Silver, and Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire all had a full National Dex. And one of the best things about those remakes is that you could use mirror Pokemon in it. Being able to use Sinnoh, Unova, and Kalos Pokemon was awesome. Like I said in the ORAS review, being able to use Mew Pokemon and their forms is one of the best aspects of the remakes. But after the Sword and Shield National Dex cut, they said they won't ever give us a game with all Pokemon ever again, even though they've been using the same models for 8 years now. If this was like previous remakes, it would have been possible to bring over Pokemon from Unova, Kalos, Alola, and especially Galar into the game, but that's asking too much these days, I guess. And BDSP has only 493 Generation 1 to 4 Pokemon, and they couldn't even bother to give us the 210 Platinum Dex, and gave us the measly 151 DP Dex. Worse and worse and worse and worse. Pokemon franchise is really going to shit. Part 5. What these remakes should have been. If you still don't understand why I hate these games, I'm gonna outline what I expected, hoped, and imagined will be in the remakes. Even though I'm a Gen 3er and not Gen 4er, ever since ORAS came out, it was fun to imagine what a Sinnoh remake would be like. For instance, I wanted everyone to have redesigns. I love everyone's redesigns of characters in Noras and how they made so many waifu baits. So I wonder what characters like Gardenia and Sepia would look like. Steven got a Mew suit in Noras. Would Sepia get a Mew fancy black dress too? Well, instead we got this. Also, I was hoping for more character interactions in the remakes because I always felt the Sinnoh characters were kind of boring. For example, a story event where you can see Byron and Roark duking it out, or confirmation of lore so that Bertha and Agatha from Kanto are relatives or something, because not confirming that, even though they were clearly related in the OG games, was weird. We also have new regions now after Sinnoh. Fantina speaks a lot of French, so maybe confirmation that she's from the Kalos region. Also, since Jasmine had a cameo in the games, wouldn't it be fun to get to battle her finally in the remakes? Sort of like how we got to battle Mist come out with a trial in the Let's Go games. In the Platinum review, I stated how boring Dialga and Palkia is because they don't do anything to show off their powers, even though they're gods that created space-time. I wanted to see Dialga and Palkia doing more stuff like manipulating space-time. Since the Hisui region is now a thing, wouldn't it make sense if Dialga sends us back in time to the time of the Hisui region? But no, RGB lied. Bleh. Or new story events for mythical Pokemon Manaphy and Phione. The Delta episode finally brought awesome Pokemon Deoxys into the main game, and it was awesome finally being able to catch mythical Pokemon in a remake. Well, instead, Manaphy is now an early purchase bonus in BDSP. Fuck you. Speaking of Delta episode, after Oras, I always kinda suspected they would do a DP remake, not a Platinum remake. But I at least thought that they would give us a Delta episode treatment post-game as compensation with Giratina, just like Oras did. So I daydreamed what that would be like. The previous games established the Pokemon multiverse, right? Remember in the end of Pokemon Platinum, how Cyrus said that he would make the Distortion world his perfect world and come back one day? Well, if I was Masuda or Omori, I've done a story where that god-like Shadow Being Cyrus from Platinum tries to invade with his perfect new world into the remake version of Sinnoh, and the player has to fight him. Maybe alongside the remake Cyrus as a nice twist, so Cyrus regains his humanity by seeing a darker version of him. A Rainbow Rocket episode done right, I suppose. Well, instead of the adult episode equivalent, we got this in the remakes. Again,
Disappointed!
if you want to imagine and see what a proper Sinnoh remake would have been like, I suggest you check out the drawings of the talented artist Nemira. You can find their socials in the link in the description. Please go support her. She's really talented and has more passion about Sinnoh than anyone who worked on this game. She has been doing character redesign for every Sinnoh character in the style of the modern Pokemon games, which is what we should have gotten in a proper remake. For example, here's Crash Awake with a Mew cool wrestler outfit, Cynthia wearing Mew clothes that makes her look fabulous, and a hat and shades because she's trying to be discreet about being a champion. Or Cyrus wearing casual clothes so that it's not fucking obvious that he's the boss of Team Galactic when he shows up early in the game. It makes him kinda hot too. But no, the once badass looking antagonist looks like a minion now in this game, and now we can't even see the Team Galactic symbol on his chest unlike the sprite where we couldn't, and we're supposed to be surprised he's the boss?
Someone drove a hot dog-shaped car through the window! Whose car is this?
Yeah, come on! Whoever did this, just get fast. We promise we won't be mad.
Part 6. Is this game a sacrifice for Legends Arceus? So we understand this game is a hot piece of uncreative, unnecessary rehash of nostalgia garbage. Not a single drop of creativity went into this game. It's the most cynical Pokemon I've ever seen since USUM. I honestly can't decide which is my least favorite game at the moment, this or USUM. The question is, why though? Why did they choose to do a borderline remaster instead of a proper remake? Well, the answer might be the next Pokemon game coming out in a few months, Legends Arceus. For the first time in Pokemon history, Game Freak is trying out something new by releasing an unconventional game not at a holiday season. They're actually trying to mix up the formula by trying to make a game that is similar to Zelda Breath of the Wild. It's also the first game that isn't set in a modern contemporary setting, which is pretty ballsy for a series famous for stagnation. My guess is that since all hands on deck was for PLA, that's why they hired ILCA to remake the games. But I assume that clueless higher-ups at the Pokemon Company, who have never played the fucking games before and just think of Pokemon as merchandise, thought that the fans wanted a Diamond and Pearl remake on paper, so they hired an obscure port developer ILCA to do it. Being a Japanese company, ILCA probably just did exactly what they were tasked to do so, which was make a DP remake by keeping everything the exact same, and didn't ask any questions such as, can we add Platinum content or can we add new stuff, just to be sure that they followed the instructions 100%. And I also deduced Masuda came in as director to oversee that the project not implode or something, write music, and make sure the Pokédex was 151. Well, this is the result. So maybe BDSP was an afterthought and a sacrifice for Legends Arceus, and maybe PLA could actually be a really good game and give Sinnoh some dignity. Or PLA could turn out to be an experimental dumpster fire. But still, even if Legends Arceus is a bad game, it's a breath of new fresh air that the series needed, so maybe it'll have a positive effect on the series. However, despite Legends Arceus existing, it still doesn't change the fact that Sinnoh was robbed of a good remake that Johto and Hoenn got, and Kanto got twice. It also doesn't change the fact that this game is hot garbage and a waste of my time, and literally only exists so that it can exploit the nostalgia and wallet of people who grew up with the original game. Also, even though I barely talked about it in the review up until now, I'm gonna guess the game's development process was a disastrous fiasco because of all the unfinishedness and bugginess I ran into. The base cartridge file is literally a complete game for the first time in the series that doesn't have all the music or proper opening. And they were actually handing out pamphlets at the game store that begged me to download the patch, which is hilarious. Also, even with the update, it's still the most glitchy game in the Pokemon series I've ever seen, excluding Game Boy games. People are getting soft locked at places, meaning there wasn't enough playtesting. There are some individuals who found a way to straight up clone Pokemon and teach any move, and some are just walking out of bounds and breaking walls. I guess another faithfulness to the original Diamond and Pearl's unfinished, glitchy state on the DS ironically, and I don't even know if this was intentional. My deduction of this rushed, unfinished status is 3 reasons. First, COVID-19 lockdown limitations is a likely suspect obviously. Second, the first trailer got a really bad reception because of the shitty graphics, especially in Japan from what I heard, so they probably have to overhaul the graphics of this game, leading to more crunch. Finally, because of these 2 things, LCA probably wanted to delay the launch of the game, but Pokemon Company demanded a holiday annual release because they fucking love money so much and they need to rip off money from the damn kids. Damn near greediness, Pokemon Company, and I just feel bad for the developers of LCA who most likely went through hell to make this atrocity. In the end, the gamers, developers, fans, all lost. Everyone lost, except maybe the higher-ups and management, who's probably getting high off looking at the sales chart of this game, because obviously it will sell well, cause it's fucking Pokemon. Part 7. Broken Chibi and Ugly Battles. I'll stop ranting about the fundamental problem of this not being a good remake and comparing to the past remakes for now. I also stop whining about the missed potentials for now, because apparently mega giant tech YouTuber Mr. Who's the Boss watches my videos. Oh, and that note, if you're enjoying this video, a sub to the channel will be not cutting corners. Still, believe it or not, this game still has problems aside from it being a Diamond and Pearl pseudo remaster. So, let's talk about the graphics first, since it's the most hotly debated stuff. I was one of the few people that actually liked the chibi art style in the beginning. You may wonder if my mind changed after playing the game for real. And, despite everything, I still do like this art style surprisingly. This art style was chosen because Sinnoh's map design has so many narrow cliffs and hallways, so I think tile-sized character wasn't a bad decision. I also did find Chibi Dawn pretty cute, unlike most people, but this is probably a me thing. However, there were some unexpected problems that made the game still shitty. First of all, this is the first Pokemon game where I can confidently say, they fucked up the controls somehow. Yeah, I know. A video game series that had directional buttons A and a B button only somehow screwed it up. Well, hear me out. The problem is that even though every NPC moves in a tile-like world with only 4 directions, you can move 360 degrees every angle with the joystick. So it's super distracting when you see NPCs move, like they're Fire Emblem characters in the world. But the problem doesn't end there. Since you can move in any direction, but all the maps are still narrow and are the same, it constantly feels like you're bumping into stuff, and the movement just feels clunky. I swear I'm bumping into every corner. I suggest you just play this game with the D-pad on your Pro Controller. Oh, but you can't do that by the way for some fucking reason, because of the damn bicycle. They completely screwed up the bicycle, and controlling the bicycle was one of the most fun things about the Gen 4 games. First of all, why is the Y button not the bike but online features? The game tries so hard to be like DP, so I keep instinctively pressing it, but it ends up pausing the game. Also, it's hard to ride in a straight line with your joystick, so you're constantly bumping into stuff. So, you want to use the D-pad, right? Well, you can't do it because one tap makes you move 2 squares for some reason, so you can't use it in the precise area where the bicycle puzzles exist. The game's camera movement is a bit weird too. Since the map is a 1-to-1 remake, everything is the same, but the camera feels different, so some things didn't translate well. For example, some of the tree placements make it hard to distinguish which are barriers and which you can go through. I felt it at places like Eterna Gym, where it was super easy to see trainers in the original games, but almost impossible here. Or these trees at places like this. How come I can move through these trees but I can't over here? They should have edited the map so these things don't happen, but oh no, that won't be faithful. The major problem I have with the graphics is the cutscenes for story moments. I thought this game was going to be like the Gen 6 games, where most of the game is chibi, but the characters turn into realistic models and important cutscenes, making it serious. But that doesn't happen in the game. The models are still chibi during important cutscenes. I seriously think they should have made cinematic animated cutscenes whenever Cyrus is around, because every time this guy appears in the game, I'm not intimidated but on the floor laughing. Did nobody at LCA think this was funny? Most of the characters suffer from Gen 7 protagonist syndrome too. There are some few changes of expressions on the faces of characters, but most of the time, everyone is blankly staring at you whenever they talk. They keep swaying too, like they're bobbleheads, and it gets on my nerves. I think they shouldn't have done any of these close-ups and kept the cameras fixed overhead like the OG games, so we don't get distracted by these blank faces and swings close up. Finally, I want to talk about the battle screen. The character animation whenever NPCs throw their Pokeball or get defeated are done pretty well. I really liked Gardenia's bubbling personality shining through her animation, and even the random NPCs looked great. For example, I liked the little detail of police officer holding the Pokeball like a gun, or the female ace trainer stroking her hair before throwing the ball. However, every time important NPCs talk in battle, every single one of them has no emotion, and just blankly stares at you like Gen 7 protagonists, and super distracting. I don't mind serious characters doing it, but it's the most distracting with Barry. Like, the dialogue does not fucking match with this blank face. Oh, I miss Barry's dance animation from Platinum, which is also gone by the way. And this game still has no side scaling with the Pokemon like Sword and Shield, making it inferior to Let's Go games. And while most of the battle backgrounds look nice, the game feels unfinished because some of the battle backgrounds look horrendous, especially the city and indoor battles. You call this Foggy Nightmare Void the bridge on the canal at Canalov City? Even the Gen 6 games were good at doing this.
It is evolving, just backwards.
Part 8. The Mew minor features. Since this is supposed to be a remake according to some crazed individuals, there are some new features in the game. If you're gonna add features, why not add them more, you Homo sapiens? Anyways, I'll start with minor things first. You can now change your clothes. That's a nice feature, I guess. Everyone is stuck wearing the same clothes for 15 years, but at least you can get Lucas and Don out of the shitty OG clothes. So the moment I got to the clothes shop at Veilstone City, I was like,
Get this shit off me! Ah! Ah! Get this beta shit off me! Ah! Ah!
HM moves are no longer a thing. You can now use HM moves on your Pokédex instead of teaching bad moves to Pokemon, so that's one thing they fixed other than the slow HP bar. But the Pokédex UI is still shit, like I mentioned before, and it feels so clunky to use. The third biggest new feature is following Pokemon, very similar to the following Pokemon mechanic in Heart Gold Soul Silver. When I first saw this in the trailer, my reaction was, phew, at least that's back. Well, they somehow screwed this up too. First, the size. Okay, every character in the game is chibi, but the Pokemon don't use chibi models. I guess they couldn't make a chibi model for every 493 Pokemon, but since they exist in a chibi world, the Pokemon sizes look hilarious, and many of them are nonsensical. Dialga looks absolutely fucking hilarious when it floats around T-posing while being the size of a peanut, and Rayquaza being a little green spaghetti. Second, most of the Pokemon that follow you are very slow compared to the movement of the player. So if you run or ride the bike, which you'll be doing constantly by the way, the Pokemon that follow you can't keep up, and they keep teleporting all over the map, and super distracting. Also, most of the Pokemon are too big to fit in the narrow spaces of Sinnoh, so they keep teleporting or sometimes glitch out too. Remember how in the Johto remakes, the Pokemon followed around right behind you one tile away? Why not make it faithful to this? Third, they made it so that whenever you have a Pokemon out, their affection meter or whatever goes up. Because of this, players are not encouraged to take out their Pokemon because it makes battles cheap and the game too easy. Speaking of difficulty, we have the forced EXP share you can't turn off from Sword and Shield. However, even the levels of every Pokemon NPC remains faithful despite a lot of them having new abilities and moves, which is another contradiction by the way. Anyways, because of that, the game is piss easy. You might have expected me to rant about it through great lengths in the video, because that's a problem a lot of people have with the game. It indeed is a problem, and I don't like the piss easy game, but I don't care. This game is so fucking bad that I was glad it was easy, because it means I could skip areas like Iron Island and trainers, so I can get done with this fucking mess faster and move on with my life. Fuck this game. Now, despite the easiness of the main campaign, the game becomes very difficult with the Elite Four and Cynthia for some dumb reason. Despite the faithful DP team, the Elite Four use sneaky tactics like Drift Bloom, spamming Minimize and using Baton Pass, and this isn't faithful. Whatever. Also, the post-game features Gym Leader and League rematches where everyone uses comp teams. Here's Volkner starting out with a Drizzle Pelipper so he can spam Thunder. Or Crasher Woke trying to decimate my team with a Rain Weather team. Or Gardenia with an OP Breloom that uses Substitute, Focus Punch, and a Toxic Orb. In fact, BDSP has the hardest post-game in the entire franchise because of the rematches. I've seen people praise this part of the game, and some questionable individuals even say this makes the game worth it. I, however, do not agree. First of all, I've stated before that I don't really care for battles in the Pokemon series, and just hard matches don't save this piece of garbage. And if you consider all the missed potential of this game, some rematches don't make this worth 60 smackaroos, or even make it worth existing.
I want more.
By the way, this is not the first game in the series with gym leaders with competitive teams. Everyone seems to forget the super hard double rematches in Emerald, or the comp teams in the Pokemon World Tournament, which will be officially forgotten by Game Freak in the Unova remakes. Part 9, Naso Grand Underground and Ram My Ass Park. The only two major features this excrement added is the Grand Underground and Raminus Park. Coincidentally, it's the two things that seems to be the face of all the marketing. Let's first talk about the Grand Underground. I never got the appeal of the Sinnoh Underground as a child. It just felt like a boring mode of getting stones out of a wall, and I was wondering if the remakes would change my mind. Well, the remakes didn't change my mind, because despite a lot of people saying they enjoyed the Mew Grand Underground, I still don't get the appeal of it. Basically, you go down to a big fuck off map and you mine. All the tunnels, rooms, and walls look the same. So despite the large map, I see no appeal of exploring and it's just a waste of my time. Also, it seems all the items you find in the wall just feel like random RNG, and it doesn't matter where you mine. So what's the point of exploration? I don't think any brain power is required, and it makes it boring for me. The mining process is meh for me too, especially in this game. Basically, it's the same as the original games, a minigame where you can use a hammer to carve out items before the wall breaks down. However, just like the Pokédex, this minigame felt like it was designed for the DS's bottom touchscreen, and the Switch's hardware doesn't fit that. So you have to manually use the pointer to dig, so it just feels like another downgrade for me. Also, all the items you get seems to be useless statues that are just there for collecting nerds, which is a bummer. Speaking of the statues, you can get statues to decorate your secret bases. I see this as another half-baked lazy gimmick. All the rooms are rectangle empty spaces, so there is no variety like the Hoenn secret bases. It also seems you're only able to decorate with statues, which is inferior to the Hoenn one because you could decorate it with furniture and create your own pseudo gym while you being a gym leader. Like, what's the point of this? The new stuff they truly added are the underground wild areas, officially called Pokemon Hideaways, and I really do not like them for many reasons, and it shares the same problems as the wild area from Sword and Shield. First, the Pokemon just walk around like zombies and they don't interact with the environment, which makes it comical. Second, there's not much variation on the appearances of rooms, so again, what's the point of exploration? All the rooms look the same. And third, the Pokemon here makes the Pokemon above ground worthless. The Pokemon that seem to spawn here seems to have about 7 levels higher than the wild Pokemon you find above ground. You can also see which Pokemon you can catch in the world, unlike the overworld. Also, Platinum Pokemon spawns too, so there is more variety among Pokemon. So, why catch Pokemon in the overworld when there's better Pokemon and it's easier to catch them down here? These caves are way too OP. So in conclusion, I don't see the appeal of the Grand Underground. It does feel like a gimmick they added in like 5 months before the release during development because they needed at least something new. Anyways, let's talk about the other major gimmick, Raminus Park.
Oh, for 5 minutes. Could you not be yourself? For 5 minutes!
Raminus Park is the replacement of Pallet Park. Since there is no reason to connect and transfer from old games, Pallet Park was replaced with this. What is this place? Well, it's whatever Pokemon does every time they get desperate about coming up with a post-game. It began with Oras, then USUM, then Sword and Shield DLC. Just catch a boatload of legendaries here, and since there's only 493 Pokemon, only the Gen 1 to 3 legendaries. I swear, Legendary Pokemon are now prostitutes and the Pokemon company's the pimp because they keep throwing it for the fans to catch whenever they get desperate. It's just always quantity over quality. I'm getting sick and tired of legendary Pokemon now. Remember back in the good games, almost every legendary has special dungeons or events designed for them? Remember how in Black and White 2, the game had about 14 legendaries, each with individual story moments? Nowadays, because legendaries are available in almost every new installment, they're more common than normal Pokemon. Like, how is the Regis more common than Perugly or Cherubi? Legendaries are legendary because they're special and not common? Well, they ruined the legendary Pokemon by making them not special anymore. Way to go, Game Freak and LCA! Ever since ORAS, they have kept using gimmicks to just get as many legendaries in there as much as possible. In ORAS, it was the Hoopa Rings. In USUM, it was the shitty Ultra Wormhole minigame. In Sword and Shield DLC, it was Dynamax raid battles. How does BDS Piss do it? Well, you have to collect these pink ores in the underground by just digging for hours. They're pretty rare, so you have to keep digging if you want the legendaries. Then, you have to spend your pink ores to buy these cartridges, and you have to go to Ravenous Park and insert them on a pedestal to make the Pokemon appear in a sunny flower field somehow. I've already mentioned how I hate digging in the underground, so this might be more annoying than the Ultra Wormhole minigame in USUM. God. In the end, both the underground and Ravenous Park feels bad for me. They just feel like empty, hollow, desperate gimmick to make the game look like not a remaster. Also, none of these new gimmicks are unique or creative, and they're all stuff from the old games too. Think about it. Clothes are from X and Y, following Pokemon are from Heart Gold and Soul Silver, getting rid of HM moves is from Sun and Moon, Wild areas are from Sword and Shield, legendary Pokemon catching gimmick like Ravenous Park is from ORAS, challenging rematches are from Black and White 2. There's not a single new stuff in the game, and all the new features are not original. Not a single drop of creativity went into this game. Fuck this game. Conclusion. I'll sum up my thoughts on this game with this clip.
I hated this
Game.
hated this
Game.
hated it. Hated every simpering, stupid, vacant, audience-insulting moment of it.
And to continue the full Ebert quote, hated the sensibility that thought anyone would like it. Hated the implied insult to the audience by its belief that anyone will be entertained by it. In conclusion, Pokemon Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl don't even deserve the word remake and suck ass. It chose to adapt an inferior game when a good game exists, and decided to add nothing to it. And all these slight additions are just meh or insignificant, and none of them are original or new. Every single remake before this, yes, existed because of fan nostalgia. However, every single remake before BDSP felt like the developers wanting to take a new shot with the region, and wanting to see what they could experiment with on familiar ground. What if we remake Red and Blue, but expanded the existing Kanto region with new areas? What if we remake Gold and Silver, but try a shit ton of new content, and make the game moody and look beautiful as hell? What if we remake Ruby and Sapphire, and add lore to Hoenn, and make it as lush as possible? For Pokemon Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl, however, I only feel cynicism. It only exists to make money from nostalgic Sinnoh fans, who will line up to buy the game no matter the game's quality. Seriously, Game Freak is already working on a new project for Sinnoh. This game didn't even need to exist. It only exists to exploit fan nostalgia. Like said with the Evert quote, this game just feels insulting to my fucking intelligence, and I says content for the people who would buy this hot garbage. It's a completely vacant experience, devoid of any will to improve Sinnoh or creativity to show off in a video game. Zero artistic touch, instead, faithfulness, or in other words, laziness. Just another addition on the endless list that is cynicism with Pokemon these days, alongside other entries such as desperate sad gacha games or cooperating with Tencent to raise your social credit score. I bet all of you Gen 5ers are terrified now. Since this game is selling well, I guess that would give the signal to the Pokemon company that it's okay to get another company to make a lazy remake that keeps everything the same. So ask yourselves, how are they gonna fuck up Unova? Well, Black and White 2 will be ignored for sure, and they will only have Gen 1 to 5 Pokemon. I guess we'll never get a remake in the style of the past remakes that includes everything and feels like a new installment ever again. In the intro, I told you how the Pokemon series have been going down a steady downhill slope. Well, it'll be hilarious if the Black and White remakes somehow turn up worse than this, and we'll look back fondly at the game by saying, at least it was faithful. Mother of God, why have you forsaken this franchise? Anyways, if you're on the fence of buying this game, I recommend don't buy it. I suggest you get the soundtrack CD when it comes out instead, because the music has more fucking creativity than the actual game. Or just go play Pokemon Platinum instead. It has way more substance than this. Thanks for watching, everyone. At last, finally, BDSP hype season is over, and I could catch a breath. I'll probably start working on videos on Gear and Blue, my second channel about movies, since Marvel and Star Wars season is coming up this December, so look forward to that. And what a day, I've reached 15.1k subscribers! Masuda will be proud that we reached the number of the best generation and region. So, I'd like to thank all the fellow Jerrykins that followed me over the past year, and say, I love you guys. Thank you from the bottom of my heart.